This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Joining me on Stockbox today is Ken Wheatley, the Vice President of Forum Energy Metals. Hi Ken, how are you?
Just fine. Yourself?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Ken. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be catching up today on some news that the company released, some geochemical news from the drilling exploration program on your Fur Island uranium project. So could you kick us off by giving us your take on it?
Well, first of all, it's, we had a difficult time with the ice conditions, so we couldn't drill all the targets that we had wanted to. So we're basically limited to drilling on the island itself and getting right up to the lake. What's come back is we've established that the boron anomaly, if anything, is getting stronger to the north along the Cathy Fault. And the Cathy Fault continues for another 4 kilometers under the lake and over to the mainland and joins up with the Black Bay Fault. And these are some targets we wanted to drill this year, but again, the poor ice conditions didn't allow us to get there. So what we're seeing here is the alteration, the offset of the unconformity, and the amount of boron is all increasing to the north along the Cathy Fault. Once it gets under the lake, we now have an EM conductor, a graphitic, I assume it's a graphitic conductor that picks up and continues across the lake. And on a side note, we managed to find another zone of nickel. And so our hole 24, I think we got about almost 100 meters worth of sort of anomalous nickel up to, what do we get here? And what was interesting is that back in 2015, we drilled our hole number 3, and we had hit quite a sequence of nickel there as well. And we just thought that was sort of a one-off. So this hole 24 is about 1.1 kilometers to the east of hole 3. And we're picked up some good nickel values there as well, up to about 0.42%. And so it's of interest. Our ultramafic guru, the guy who's looking after us, Larry Hulbert, with our Love Lake project, he looked at the geochemistry and figured, well, if the elevated nickel in ultramafics, you better check for some platinum, palladium, and gold. So we've sent about 20 samples off to the lab to get assayed for these elements, and we'll see what comes back.
Okay. So you mentioned that the poor ice conditions, did that hamper the drill program, or were you able to make changes? Because you've still got you've got 361 core samples. So were you able to still perhaps make the most of the conditions?
Well, we did what we could. We had to limit our drilling to the island itself. The ice road took longer than we wanted, and drilling on the ice, we managed to get one hole, the very last hole of the season, and we did it right beside the shoreline where it was frozen down to bottom. But usually, like say 2015 was a good year. We drilled 10 holes on the ice, and we just drove everywhere without any issues. There was about 1.5 meters of ice, and all we had to do was scrape off a little bit of snow, and we can drill. So that was a good cold December. This year, the winter started up in February when we started having our minus 50s, and that helped get the road in. And so we set up camp on the island, but we had to drill mostly on land. We could not do our lake targets like we had planned to. So we got through about half of the program, which we had planned on the land, and the other half of the program was to be going up the Cathy Fault on the ice, and we couldn't get around to doing those.
Okay, but is the plan to revisit them hopefully next season?
Oh, certainly. I'd say that's our for uranium. It's our best target is heading up in that direction, up to the where the Cathy Fault meets the Black Lake Fault on the mainland.
Okay.
And for sure, the next drill program will be testing those targets out.
Okay. So you also mentioned there, and the RNS states that the Cathy Fault seems to be increasing in potential to the north. And you also mention boron, which, as I understand, is like a pathfinder material. So I wonder, can you explain, first of all, what boron is and how you're using it, and how is the fault looking like in terms of its increasing?
Okay. Well, the boron, it usually picks up in a clay we call dravite. And what happens when the uranium mineralizing fluids get into these areas, the fluids themselves are very destructive. They're hot and very salt rich. And you know what that can do to a car would rust in no time in those kind of conditions. So it's destroying a mineral called tourmaline, and it picks out the boron and then drops it off again in a clay called dravite. So basically all the eastern Athabasca deposits, and some of the west as well, they always have a boron anomaly around it from these dravitic clays. So we're always happy to see this kind of thing around a major structure. It's used sort of as a vector or a pathfinder towards a uranium deposit. As you know, these high-grade uranium deposits are quite small, very high grade, but they're difficult to find. So we look for these pathfinder elements, the coppers, nickels, boron. This is the type of thing we like to see around a structure, and that gives us hope that there's going to be a uranium deposit nearby. So the boron halo starts about halfway up the Cathy Fault on the island and continues, it seems to be increasing as we get under the lake and going towards the north. So between that and the fault itself, down at the south end of the Cathy Fault, it's almost more like a slope, a gradual slope heading down. We can still see where it is in the basement, offsetting the unconformity. But once you get up into the lake and the holes that we drilled back in 2015, there's a good 50-meter offset, and it's just straight up and down. So the fault is becoming much more defined and much more localized, which again is a good thing for a uranium deposit.
Okay. And are you starting to understand the deposit a bit more now, despite you didn't complete the full program this season because of the warmer winter, but are you starting to understand it a bit more? And yeah, what makes you think that it's increasing with this increasing potential to the north?
Well, it's the combination of the boron increasing. We've actually had more uranium showing up on those northern holes. The height of the fault is there, and again, the EM conductor that wasn't down on the land part does show up out on the lake and continues to the north. So it's a combination of four things that look like the potential is definitely increasing to the north along this fault.
Okay. So what's next then, Ken?
Well, it's we have to have a meeting with Orano, who's paying for all of this in the first place. Discuss what we want to do. Like I said, the resistivity survey that we've done has brought out this Cathy Fault quite nicely. We may want to extend that to the north as well, and to see what happens, or we just do a drill fences along this to the north until we pick up some better uranium. Now, then there's the nickel that's showing up as well. Now, we haven't talked about that yet, but we've had several holes now that have come back with some relatively decent nickel results, over almost 100 meters in one hole and 68 meters in another. So we're also looking into that to see if that's going to go anywhere.
Okay, so potentially there a decent nickel deposit as well, maybe.
Well, there's always hope, but like I say, the basement geology in this area for Island is much more complicated than what we get in the eastern Athabasca, where we just have our, this Wollaston domain with graphitic conductors and, only a few rock types. And for Island, it's along this major, what we call the snowbird tectonic zone. And there's quite a few different types of rock in this area. It's a monster structure that goes actually right down at the States and continues on right up into the Arctic. So there's been a lot of tectonization movement in different rocks that we've had in this area. So we have found in hole 3, for example, we got into some ultramafics with some good structure in it, and that was what was returning the nickel. In hole 24, right around the Cathy fault, it was a single hole, and this is where we drilled almost 100 meters of elevated nickel with, I think it's up to 0.42% nickel. Our guru took a look, our ultramafic guru who's looking after Love Lake for us, Larry Hulbert. He looked at the geochemistry and said, well, these are definitely mafics and ultramafics. And with the high nickel, you guys should be taking a look at the platinum, palladium, and gold in these rocks. So we've sent off about 20 samples to the lab to be assayed with these rocks, and we are still waiting for the results to come back.
Okay. Well, Ken Wheatley there, the Vice President of Forum Energy Metals. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this Stockbox interview. For more information, interviews and videos, visit our website at stockboxmedia.com or give us a follow on Twitter by searching @StockboxMedia.